to give Gabriel a full slate of 30 minutes. We're going to do our door prizes at the end, and we'd love for you to stick around. So, Gabriel, could you make your way up here as he comes up? I want to say I met Gabriel in the Woodlands, and I was at an event, and as I was speaking with Gabriel, we were just chatting, and I said, man, this guy would be awesome to speak to our chamber. And I said, when would be a good time to do this? And he wrote a book called If I Can, You Can. And it's in Spanish right now. It's in publication and press, and you can buy it in Spanish. However, Gabriel's going to provide me with a QR code and a link where you can go and get the PDF version in English. And I'll be getting that out in an email to everybody this week. But this is our guest speaker, Mr. Gabriel Najera. Give him a round of applause, everybody. And Gabriel, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Don. Thank you for inviting me out here, and good morning. Nobody's awake yet, are you? Good morning.
Good morning.
That sounds a lot better. Thank you. Thank you for the warm applause. Thank you. I always enjoy a good round of applause. But let me ask you a quick question real quick. What does that feel like? What does it feel like to applaud? And the reason I'm asking is because that's something I'll never know. I get to watch you, I get to hear you applaud, and it sounds cheerful, and it sounds like you really do it with a lot of enthusiasm, and you really, put your hands together and make that loud noise. What does it feel like? Because I'll never know. Just like I'll never know what it's like to put your arms around somebody, to give a big hug, to take your hands and caress somebody's face. What does that feel like? But I don't dwell too much on the things that I don't do, because I've learned that in life there's a lot more things important. They're a lot more important than focusing on what you don't have or what you can't do or you think you can't do. And that is to actually focus on the things that you do have, the things that you can do, the life that you're living, being present, being here today, and enjoying this moment right now. Because this moment is never going to repeat itself. Life doesn't repeat itself. Once time goes by, that's it. It's gone. We can't get it back. So why dwell on something that you can't change or something that you think you can't change when you can actually enjoy life by living the moment and enjoying the moment? Many years ago, I learned about an old Japanese tradition where, I forgot what it's called because I have a terrible memory with names, especially when they're foreign names. But there's a tradition where they sit around, they sit at a table at a time when it's tea time, as they tend to drink a lot of tea. And they sit at the table and they don't discuss anything except what's happening at the moment. They don't talk about the past, they don't talk about the future. Whereas in most other cultures, people talk about the past. Have you ever noticed that when you meet somebody, well, not meet somebody, but when you run into an old friend or a family member, what's the first thing you usually say? Hey, how's it going? What you been doing? What have you been up to? Remember when we used to go here? Remember when we used to do this and that and the other? And you spend most of your time talking about the past. In this Japanese tradition, they spend the time talking about the present, which I find really amazing because they talk about, man, this is a great tasting tea. Or if they're eating something with a cake or something, they're like, man, this cake is really good. Or they compliment each other and say, man, you look nice today. Hey, I love your hair. Hey, I like your jacket. they enjoy the moment. Enjoy the present. And that's what I'd like for you to do today, is to just take a few minutes right now while I'm standing up here, and don't think about what you did yesterday, or don't think about what you got to do once you leave here, because I know a lot of you are thinking about, oh man, I hope he hurries up. And don't worry, I'm not going to take up too much time. Don told me I only have 2 hours. So, but I know a lot of people are thinking about what they got to do once they leave here, and the business they got to go take care of, and, run the baby to the daycare and all that good stuff. But just take the moment of just enjoying right now. Right now, because this is all we got. It's the present. But anyway, I'd like to tell you a little more about me, if you don't mind. You want to know a little more about me? Yes. Cool. Besides what Google says, which is not all true, I'm originally from Mexico City. I was born in Mexico City back in July 13, 1966. I have 57 years for those doing the math in your head. I know most of you here probably do the math in your head, right? Because you look like you're old enough to where you were still taught to do math in your head. Unfortunately, when I go to schools nowadays, the kids don't do math in their heads anymore. Everybody pulls out the cell phone. All right, let's see, 1966, yeah, that's 57. Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm 57. And I'll proudly say that I'm 57. I'll be 58 July 13. Write it down on your calendar. Okay, it's an important date. Don't forget it. I expect my present. And yes, I came to the world the usual way. No, they didn't find me under the rock. But as I was coming out of my mother's womb, the doctors took one look at me, and the first thing that they thought was that I was dead, that I was born with no life. And they came to that conclusion just because, they didn't see all the equipment that came, supposed to come with the baggage here. And they said, wow, he's dead. Until they figured out that I wasn't, when they looked up at him and I said, no, wait a minute, I'm not dead, I'm here. Well, not quite in those words. It was more like, wah, wah. That universal language that we all speak, when we're born. And I say it's a universal language because so far I've been to many countries and I've seen a lot of babies from different countries and they all speak the same language. I don't know, have you ever seen two babies when they get together and they're talking to each other? They look like they understand each other, don't they? But then I don't understand why we have to grow up and learn different language and then we can't understand each other anymore. I haven't figured that one out yet. I vote that we go back to the original language, but then again, my vote doesn't count. But anyway, I was coming out of my mother's womb, and they figured out that I wasn't dead, so they took me and they put me in my mom's arms, and they told my mom, oh, we're sorry, ma'am, he's not dead, but he probably won't live for very long. He doesn't have the arms and the legs are kind of twisted, So don't expect much of a lifespan for him. I told my mom that I probably wouldn't be around for more than maybe a couple of hours or maybe a couple of days, but probably at the most a couple of weeks if that was really, My mom just kind of took me in her arms. She hugged me real tight. She looked at me and she just said, let it be God's will. That's all she said. She just said, let it be God's will. As she was holding me, she, fell asleep. She was tired from giving birth, and she fell asleep holding me. The doctors came and took me away from her arms, and they took me to some other room in the hospital, put me under a microscope and see what I was made out of. Now, back in those days, like I say, back in the 60s, they didn't have the technology like they do today. Nowadays, when a baby's born, they take a drop of blood and they run it through the DNA and they figure out, who you're going to marry and what you're going to die from. But back in those days, they didn't have that technology, so they didn't know who I was going to marry or die from. But, the question was always in the back of everybody's mind, what happened? what happened? What went wrong, or why was I born like this? My parents were also just as curious as everybody else because, of course, when somebody would come over to the house, to see the baby, the first thing that people, what happened? Oh. And my mom, we as human beings, we like to blame somebody else, right? Not my fault, it's your fault, No, it's not my fault, it's your fault. Well, my parents weren't any different, My mom would look at my dad and say, well, it's your fault, if you hadn't been smoking so many cigarettes. My dad, he wasn't too far behind. It was your fault. I mean, if you hadn't been watching so many soap operas, Of course, they never really came to any conclusions. I mean, nothing was ever really learned from, why I was born like this. But it wasn't until one day my mom and dad, they took me to the doctor. They were frequently taking me to the doctor that was there when I was born, and the pediatrician. And one day he noticed that there was a little, bickering between my mom and dad about, what happened and this and that. And so he finally sat them down in his office and said, look, okay, I got to stop this, okay? You can't keep arguing. You can't keep trying to find who to blame. It doesn't matter anymore. What you got to worry about is you've got a child here that's, he's living, he's breathing. Worry about, you got to feed him, you got to clothe him, you got to educate him. That's what you really need to worry about. Not about what happened or why or who, what. That doesn't matter. And that was the first time that my parents had to learn the lesson of what I was speaking about earlier, that you've got to live the present. You can't change the past. Leave the past behind because there's nothing to change. And the future, you don't have it, nobody's guaranteed a future. We hope that we may be around for a few more days or a few more hours or a few more, whatever, but there's no guarantee. So why not just enjoy right now? And that's what my parents had to learn was about, taking care of this child that was here. And look forward to the future and maybe make a few plans here and there. And I must say they did a pretty good job because I'm still here. I didn't go anywhere. And I went all the way through school. Like I said, I was born in Mexico City, but when I was 5 years old, my parents started noticing that, I did have something between my ears besides the wax that's in there. And they noticed that there was, like a little squirrel, going around inside the head that, was hungry, hungry for knowledge. That I did have a brain, and it was time to start teaching it. So they started looking for a school all over Mexico that would, take me in, but unfortunately I never got a chance to go to school in Mexico. Because all the culture back in those days didn't really leave much for handicapped kids. They would take kids with handicaps and maybe send them out to, the grandparents' farm or ranch or something like that. Or in some instances, they'd take the kids and throw them in the closet, lock the door, and come back 20 years later and see if, he was cured. Like being handicapped was some kind of disease, or like it was contagious. I don't think it's contagious because I haven't walked up to anybody yet and their arms fall off, I tell people that being handicapped is just a different way of life. That's all it is. It's a different way of doing things. In my case, I don't do anything with my hands because I don't have them. I do everything with my feet. My feet are my hands. I learned how to do everything that you can do with your hands. I learned how to do them with my feet. And I mean everything. I'm 100% independent. I don't depend on anybody. As a matter of fact, for a while I was living by myself and didn't have nobody to do anything. I do all the cooking, laundry, clean house, which is why I got married. And then one day I stopped cooking and cleaning and got divorced. But everything that you do with your hands, I do with my feet. And so when my parents were looking for a school, they unfortunately were never able to find one in Mexico. But when I was around 5, close to 6 years old, somebody had told my parents about this school that used to be around. They're not; it's closed down now. But it used to be not too far from here, a little town you probably know or familiar with around here called Port Arthur. Well, that's where I grew up. I grew up in Port Arthur. There was a school there for handicapped kids. It used to be called the Hewing Center for Handicapped Kids, which was a real school. It wasn't just a daycare. It wasn't just a place where you drop the kids off and come back 20 years later, or anything like that. It was a real school, and I went to that school from the time I was 6 years old until I was 16. There was also a boarding school type. I lived there. They had dorms, and I lived there with 100 kids. There were 50 boys, 50 girls, and we all lived there throughout the school year, and then we'd go back home to our parents, which in my case, I'd go back to Mexico to my family for the summer vacation and Christmas vacation. I grew up there, and I graduated from public high school, from Thomas Jefferson High School in Port Arthur back in those days, which is not around anymore either. Boy, I'm getting old. They're closing down all my schools. And then from there, I moved on to go live at the dorms at Lamar University in Beaumont. I went to Lamar University where I studied computer science. And once I finished Lamar, I moved to Houston to look for a job. Because once I finished college, my dad sat me down and he said, "Son, okay, we've supported you long enough now." And it was pretty expensive, so time for you to start buying your own Cokes and pay your own rent and your own gas and buy your own car and your insurance and your light bill and your phone bill and your water bill. And boy, that's expensive. It was nice when my parents used to pay for it. Okay, so I moved to Houston and I started looking for a job. And unfortunately, I ran into the same problem I had when I was a kid, that, I'd knock on the company's doors and the business owners would look at me and they're like, "Sorry, but we already filled the position. Check back with us in a couple of months or check back with us in a couple of years and see, if anything's changed." So after about 2 years of trying to get a job in the computer business, which is what I had studied, one day I woke up and I was like, okay, there's got to be another way. There's got to be another way. And I learned many years ago that, God closes a door, or not that he closes the doors, but, sometimes you run into the doors that are closed, but God always opens another door, Or he finds a way to open a window, and you can crawl through the window. But you can still get there. And so I decided if nobody was going to hire me, then I'd just start my own business. Duh. What an idea, huh? Yeah, if nobody's going to hire me, I'd just start my own business. I mean, I'm not going to tell myself no, right? You don't have to negotiate salary. Don't have to ask permission to miss work. I can go when I want, be late if I want. Yeah, what a great idea. I'll start my own business. Wow. That day when I came up with that idea, I ran to the courthouse where, first thing you got to do is go register your name, get your DBA. So I ran to the courthouse, paid my $5. It used to cost $5. Now it costs, what, $25, $30 now? Ran down to the courthouse, got my DBA, came back home, posted that little DBA up on the wall next to the same wall that said that I paid my tuition. My college just paid for. And hung that piece of paper there on the wall, sat at my desk, and I was like, yeah, now I'm the boss. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. The boss. Yeah. The boss of what? Nothing. Nothing? I mean, you don't have a business unless you have what? Customers? You need customers? Oh man, where did I get those from? Back then they didn't have Google, so I couldn't ask Google where to get customers from. I was like, man, what do I do now? What do I do now? So I took the Yellow Pages. Back in those days we used to have Yellow Pages. take the yellow pages and started looking, see where I could find customers and what I need to do. Until I figured out that, how about if I just called all those companies where I had applied for work, and instead of calling them up and asking them for employment, I started calling them up and offering my services as a business. They didn't know who they were dealing with. They just knew they were dealing with a company. And so I used to keep a list of all the places where I had gone and applied for a job. And I called them one by one, and I called them up and say, good afternoon. We're calling from the Office of Soft Hard Systems. That was my company name, Software, Hardware, computer company, Calling from Soft Hard Systems, saying we'd like to offer you our services. We know that your company is looking for a program to do this and this and this and this and this. I knew what they needed. I'd already gone through the job interview. We know that you were going to pay an employee for about a year to make this program for you. And we'd like to offer you our services where we can make the program for you, and we can do it in 6 months instead of a year, and we'll only charge you half of what you were going to pay an employee for a full year. Sound like a good deal, doesn't it? Yeah, the math is there. You think they took me up on it? Yeah? No. Nah, actually, out of 147 companies that I called, only one of them took me up on it. Only one. I was like, yes, yes. That's all I needed. That's all I needed was one opportunity, one chance. The one thing that we all want as human beings is to be given an opportunity. One, at least one. Give me one chance to show you who I am. Give me one opportunity so that you can see what I'm made of. Give me one opportunity so that I can either make it or break it, but at least I can say that I tried. In my vocabulary, the only thing that failure means is to not try. Otherwise, failure does not exist. I cannot fail if I at least try. Because if things maybe don't go the way I want them to when I try, all it means is that there's something that I have to learn from that. Every time I try, I have a learning experience, but I never have a failure. I try and I try and I try until I get it done. And if it's not up to me to get it completely done, then I find someone else who can come on board with me and say, let's try it. But at least give me one opportunity. And I did. I got that one opportunity that was all I needed. And I took that opportunity. I didn't make them sign any contract. I didn't say, all we did, I was going to say shake hands, but we didn't shake hands. And all I needed, was their word, and they gave me their word that they would wait 6 months. They weren't in no big hurry. They gave me 6 months to do the program because, I knew computer programming. And I started working on it day and night, day and night, day and night, day and night, until I completed it 2 weeks before the deadline that I had promised. 2 weeks before the deadline, I finished it. I sent it to them. Back in those days, programs used to come in, discs, floppy disks. I sent them the box with 32 discs. That was the whole program. And they tried it, and they called me up 5 days later and told me they liked the program, that they did exactly what they wanted, what they were looking for, and then I could go by and pick up the check. They're like, yes, I can eat now. I didn't get to eat before. I was poor. I was poor. I was like, I'm hungry. That one customer became my best customer that I had for 12 years. After that project, they liked it so much, and when I went to pick up the check, it was kind of funny because I went to pick up the check, and I walked in the door, and the owner of the company greeted me, and it's like, what are you doing here? And I was like, I came to pick up the check. He said, pick up a check for what? You don't work here. I said, no, you're right, I don't. He said, no, I remember you. I interviewed you about 6 months ago, right? I said, yeah, you did. I know I'm hard to forget because I'm handsome, but, you know. And he's like, no, I remember. I interviewed you. I said, yeah, you did. He said, so what kind of check are you picking up? I said, I'm picking up the check for a soft card system. I said, oh, yeah, that company that wrote that program for us, right? I said, yeah, that company. He's like, oh, great. You got a job with them? They hired you? I was like, no, they didn't hire me. What do you mean they didn't hire you? So what? So are you with a delivery company? You know, can you pick up the check for them or what? I said, no, I don't work for a delivery company. And he's like, so why are you picking up the check for the company? I said, because it's my company, my business. He's like, really? It's your company? I said, yeah, it's my company. He's like, oh, wow, great, congratulations, man. Yeah, y'all really did a good job. We really liked the program. And as a matter of fact, there's, another project just like this one if you'd like to, take another project on. I was like, yeah, I would love to, no problem. So I was like, okay, cool. And he's like, oh, by the way, how many employees do you have? Me? Just me? He's like, really? You did the program all by yourself? I was like, yeah, I did. I did the program all by myself. Can't you see how my eyeballs are sticking out? I was like, wow, cool. He said, I'll tell you what, Gabriel, he said, how about if instead of you taking that project with you, would you consider maybe now coming on board with us here and becoming a part of the family now? I looked at him and I said, no. I'm sorry, sir. With all due respect, 6 months ago when I came in, you interviewed me and I was looking for work, it would have been an honor to become a part of your family. But no, I don't think so. Now we can keep working together, your company with my company. He looked at me and said, well, it worked out the first time. I think we can do it again. Yeah, sure, why not? Let's do it. I said, great. Can I have my check now? Like, oh, yeah, sure, here's your check. Yeah, thanks, appreciate it. Thanks to that company and that project, that second project I was able to hire another programmer to work with me. And that company then referred me to some of their customers and some of their vendors. And within 3 years, that computer company that I had started, we were already invoicing over $2.5 million a year. Thank you. I had that company for about 14 years. I had it for about 14 years. And in that span of 14 years, I started 3 other businesses. I started after that an import-export company because as my company, the computer software company, grew, we were getting customers mainly from Mexico and Central America. And so the people in Mexico used to say, hey, Gabriel, hey, can you get us this computer a lot cheaper over on the other side over there? Because the computer back in those days would cost about $5,000 in Mexico, and here in the States I could buy it for $2,000. There's the math. I buy it for $2,000, sell it to them for $3,000, they could still sell it for $5,000. Hey, it's a win-win, right? So I started my import-export company where I was exporting computers, and meanwhile I would also import a few things from Mexico, some decorating stuff. And after that import-export company, I then started another company that was designing networks, where we set up networks for companies to connect worldwide, which is what we now call the internet. I didn't invent the internet, but I was a part of its growing stages. And then lastly, the last business that I started was a taqueria. Anybody like tacos? Yeah, well, that was the Mexican in me that came out and said, okay, let's put on a taqueria. And so that's what it does, started a taqueria. And it wasn't until later on that one day I was in my car, which, by the way, I drive my own car. I told you, everything that you do, I do it, except I do it with my feet. As a matter of fact, I've also flown a plane. I only got to fly when it was up there. I didn't get to land it. A friend of mine has his private plane one day, and he took me up and he said, "Hey, you want to fly?" "Yeah, sure, I'll fly." He said, "No, I mean, you fly the plane." I was like, "Really?" "Wow, cool." So he took me up there, and once we got up there, he's like, "Okay, do this and this and this and this and this, and watch this and move this and this and this and this and this. Got it?" "Yeah, sure, why not?" Yeah, I flew that plane. We took off of West Houston Airport, and we landed in Matagorda. Went down there, had a hamburger, and came back. So that was fun. But I kept going, with those businesses until one day I met up with a pastor from a church who met me at a car wash, and he couldn't believe that I was driving my car. And he was like, "Man, you got to come to my church. You got to come and give your testimony." I was like, "Okay, yeah, sure." He said, "Don't worry about it. All you got to do is just, get up there on the stage with me, and I'll ask you a few questions, and you just answer the questions." "Okay, I can handle that." Well, he said, "By the way, I have 3 services. You mind doing 3? I was like, "Okay, well, if I can do 1, I can do 3. So he invited me over, and, like I said, God always opens doors, and that was the opening of God giving me the opportunity to speak at that church. The first service, they had about 300 people. Second service, they had about 800. And the third service, it was about 2,000 people. After those services, people started coming up to me and inviting me to go to their companies to talk to their employees. They invited me to go to other churches, go to the schools to talk to their kids, go to other cities, other states, other countries. And basically, for the past 20 years, this is what I've been doing now, is going around the world telling people that, hey, if I've been able to do everything that I've done in my life with this body, why can't you? What's stopping you? You said I had 2 hours.
I said,
This is actually a 2-hour presentation. I wasn't kidding about 2 hours, but he told me I only had 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and I was like, okay, I'll try to shorten it down as much as I can. But the last thing that I want to leave with you real quick, can I get 2 more minutes?
can you have 2 more minutes? Yeah, you bet you can.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Can you do me a quick favor? Well, I mean, yeah or no, I can't read your minds. Yes, yes? Okay, cool. Okay, do me a favor. Let go of whatever you got in your hands. If you're holding your cell phone or your purse or your baby, no, don't let go of the baby. Let go of whatever you got in your hands for a minute, okay? Let go of what you got in your hands so your hands are free, okay? Close your eyes. Close your eyes. Close your eyes for a minute. Close your eyes. Okay. Now I want you to take your right hand and place it over your left shoulder. And I want you to take your left hand and place it over your right shoulder. I'd like to ask you for the next few seconds if you can let me borrow your hands. Let me borrow your hands as if they were mine so that I can hug you. Let me borrow your arms so I can put my arms around you and hold you. And hold you real tight, the same way my mother did when I was born. The same way that she took me in her arms and held me real tight and said, let it be God's will. This is a hug that you can give yourself at any moment in your life, no matter where you're at, no matter what's happening, what's going on. If you ever feel sad, if you ever feel lonely, if you ever feel like the world's ending and you can't find your way out, you feel like nobody's listening, you feel like there's no way out, you can give yourself this hug. And remember this moment that we shared together. This moment that when I came here to tell you, that I love you, when I came to tell you that everything's going to be okay, when I came to tell you that God loves you. And I'm not the only one that's holding you right now, but you're also in the arms of God. That God is always holding you in his hands, and he's never to let you go. No matter what's going on, no matter how bad it seems, you're always in God's hands. And you can give yourself this hug. And remember this small phrase that I came to share with you today that says that if I can, you can. Thank you very much for your time. God bless you.
All right, bud. Fantastic.
Thank you. God bless.
All right, he'll stick around. Get some pictures.
Yeah.